It's December 30, 2010. I'm Tim Philpot. I have been on a kick lately, the last 2 or 3 years, that we all have a story to tell. And I'm not as interested in sermons as I used to be, but I do love stories. And I'm trying to leave a little bit of my story behind. And as I began to think about the story, a lot of it, amazingly a lot of it, is on Highway 68 from Wilmore to Lexington, Kentucky. I've been to 67 countries and done a lot of stuff, but when you get right down to it, most of my story can be told on one little highway of about 15 miles. And it started here at 212 South Maple Street, Wilmore, Kentucky. We're about 2 blocks off of Highway 68. This is the house where I grew up. It was white then. I'll tell more of that story later, but my story starts right now, right here, and I hope you'll hang with me for a few minutes. Yeah, we're leaving 212 South Maple. There's the little front yard there I thought was a mountain when I was a kid, but my first memories of being alive are there. And we ended up there because, like everybody's story, mine didn't start with when I was born. I won't go back too far, but 1947, my mom and dad moved to Wilmore, Kentucky. My dad was a miserable alcoholic. My mother had become a Christian during World War II. Dad was gone from her for 39 months in the South Pacific, and while he was gone, she went to a little Methodist church, met the Lord, and so when he came back from the service, my mother was quite different than she was when he left her. As my dad likes to say, Jenny used to be fun. And her pastor was from Asbury, had gone to Asbury College and Seminary and knew about Asbury and Wilmore, and suggested that if they could get my dad into Asbury College, maybe something good would happen. And that's exactly what happened. In the fall of '47, they moved to Wilmore, and that fall sometime my dad met the Lord very miraculously, quit drinking, and started preaching. And so 1951, 4 years later, my mom and dad had totally given up on having any kids, and I was born. My mother was 37, and then later my little brother Danny came along. But I had a wonderful childhood here, but it all started when my father met Jesus Christ in 1947. And you'll see as I tell the rest of my story that I'm thankful to God, of course, for His mercy and His grace. But the truth of the matter is, realistically speaking, if my dad hadn't changed, I suspect I would have been hopelessly lost even today too, because little boys tend to want to do what their dads do. So my testimony really starts way before 1951 when I was born. I'm now on Highway 68. Here we go. It's about 15 miles to Lexington. Our first stop, and you can see we're not going very fast, but it's only 2 or 3 blocks away, is actually the place where I received eternal life. We're passing the campus of Asbury College on the left, and when I got out of high school in 1969, Tates Creek in Lexington, I was a totally ordinary kid, student, 2.9 GPA. I wasn't good or bad necessarily, looking back on it. I was just a kid who was very normal in the sense that I had 2 different lives. I had one life I lived in front of my parents, who thought I was a good kid who had met the Lord, and then I had a totally secretive life, different life that they knew nothing about. And living that dual life creates a lot of pressure on anybody. I think most people live a dual kind of a life, one life in front of the people they want to impress with what a good guy they are, and a whole nother life than the real them. And I was in that situation. And so when I was 18 years old, I was a freshman at Asbury College, and on February 3, 1970, a so-called revival broke out here at Asbury College. It's hard to explain. I'm not going to try to explain it all, except to say that for one whole week classes were canceled. They required chapel at Asbury 3 times a week, and at one of those chapel sessions, 10 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, February the 3rd, this revival broke out. And basically it was a heavenly kind of church service, if you want to call it that, that lasted day and night. I had actually skipped chapel that day, so I wasn't around when it all started, but I wandered in about an hour later, and on February 6th, 1 a.m. in the morning, early on that Friday morning, I had been sitting through this thing kind of skeptically. I felt a huge compulsion to allow God to have my life. So it's probably no coincidence that I was in the back of the auditorium. I'll start moving. It's in the back of the auditorium where I basically grabbed the arm of a young lady that I didn't really know all that well, and I said, "Judy, I know this is going to be hard to believe, but I'm not a Christian." And she says, "That's not hard to believe." And she proceeded to tell me that 5 of my buddies were downstairs in some room praying for me specifically at this moment when I knew I had to do something. So 1 in the morning, I knelt at an altar. I don't remember a lot of details, but I know that when I got up from that altar, I was completely changed. And of course, in hindsight now, I know I was not the worst guy in the world. But I know at that time, when I was 18 years old, I thought I was the worst sinner that ever lived. And I think maybe that's what needs to happen to most people before they can really meet God. They need to recognize their need. I did, and that's the moment in time that was a big change for me. We're now driving through Wilmore, a little sleepy town of almost nobody. And on the left here is another big moment in my life. There's a house here where a girl named Susan Davis lived. I'm going to pull over for just a half a second. And it used to be white, but I can see they've painted it brown now. But my wife now lived here in 11th and 12th grade. And we were dating during that time, and I can promise you, sitting in a car, actually my dad's LTD quite often, or my mother's little Mustang, I have a lot of wonderful memories sitting in that car in front of this house, smooching as much as my little wife would allow me to smooch. We had a lot of good times. And of course, Highway 68, I lived in Lexington, so we traveled up and down Highway 68 a lot. I probably came down here 2 or 3 times a week during junior and senior year of high school. And Sue, you know, other than my salvation experience, I'm sure meeting and marrying Sue is the smartest move I ever made. She gave me a lot of confidence and self-esteem. I couldn't believe that a little girl who was the homecoming queen would even look at me, let alone date me. But I think my Mustang had something to do with that. Pretty sure it did, in fact. Okay, we're leaving Wilmore. We're headed for Lexington. Interestingly, on the left here is going to be Wesley Village. It's a retirement center for elderly people, shall we say, and I'm getting there. I think I'm officially eligible now for Wesley Village. If I recall the age requirements, I'm 59. But my mother lived here the last probably 4 or 5 years of her life. And a very vivid memory for me, of course, is about 5 years ago. I was with her in the room one evening, and I went home and got the phone call that she'd passed away at age 91. And I came down, and I still remember being in the room with her when she was dead. But I was very fortunate to have a wonderful mom. Probably as a family court judge now, it's probably one of my problems is I end up comparing everybody to my mother, and I give my mother speech way too often probably. But my mom was a big influence on my life because my dad was an evangelist. He was gone all the time, so my mother basically raised my brother and I. She was mom and dad and chauffeur and baseball coach and a lot of those kind of things because my dad was gone. 1969, Sue and I both graduated from high school, and she broke my heart by breaking up with me. And actually, it was good for both of us. We discovered in not dating each other for about 1.5 years that we really did probably need to be together someday. And we got married maybe way too young at age 20, the summer of 1971. But she was attending the University of Kentucky, working on her nursing degree, 2-year nursing degree at UK. While she was there, she lived with a family, the Cassidys, on a farm right here on US 68. So one of my most pleasant memories actually is been on that farm with her, basically on the day that we got back together, probably in the winter or the spring of 1971. She and I got reconnected. I'm sure me becoming a Christian had something to do with it. She wasn't going to marry a heathen like me. She finally decided I qualified at some level. And I can remember being on this farm and being with Sue and recognizing that I didn't know when it was going to happen, but I think we both knew that we were back together. We were going to be back together forever and ever. Here we are now. We're going to be married 40 years coming up this next year. And as some people know, for the last couple of years, I've been on a little bit of a kick. Being in family court has put me this way, but maybe I've seen too many divorces and too many families in crisis. But I have decided in my older age that marriage is way more important than we ever thought it was. And for those of us that know the Lord to remain married and stay married and be married and work on our marriage, even though it's very difficult, is probably the most important thing we can do. And so I like what John Eldridge says about marriage, that it's a love story set in the midst of a war. And I know that marriage is difficult just because I've got basically the perfect wife and we don't have any children, as it turned out. And I've got a good job and everything is going well with my life, but in the midst of all that, marriage is still difficult. So if it's hard for me, I can only imagine what it's like for a lot of people. But it's something we need to work at. And it's the best reflection we have of what our relationship with God is supposed to look like. By the way, we're passing Keene Run Golf Club. Golf has been a big part of my life. I'm a member at this club right here on Highway 68. I try to play a lot of golf in the summer, and the Lord has kind of released me to have a ministry in golf. I know that sounds funny to people that don't play golf, but I'm not going to try to explain it to you. But I love every Thursday morning at 7 a.m. I meet with 10 to 15 golfers there for Bible study, and if the weather's good, we go play a little golf. On the left, we're now, in fact, I'm just going to run through here real fast. Hadn't thought to do this. It's funny, there's so many great things about this. I had totally forgotten that my mom and dad are buried right here, and I'm going to be here soon. Bluegrass Memorial Gardens, here we go. It's within about 300 yards of my house, but we're passing the Garden of the Apostles and the Garden of Gethsemane. I come over here quite often. I jog over, I walk over. I spent a little time talking to the geese and to my mom and dad, who are buried right over there to the right. It's wintertime, so you can see through the trees, but Sue and I will be right there next to my mom and dad. One of these days, I got some uncles and aunts in this cemetery, and the good news is I won't really be here. My bones will be here, but that's about it. It's a great place. I'm glad my mom and dad got this a long time ago. Somehow, I don't know why, but it makes me feel good to just kind of know this is where my bones are going to be someday. And I get to come over and actually take a little grass off the spot where my body's going to lay and talk to my dad once in a while. And I find myself crying there quite a bit, asking Dad, how come I'm so much like you? I hope you didn't have as much trouble as I'm having with something or other. But I also come over here and thank them, because being like your parents is both good and bad. In my case, mostly good, thankfully. I'm back on 68, and if you turn right here in just a minute, you would end up in my home. We're now approaching the most important part of this story for me. On Super Bowl Sunday, 1970, Sue and I were broken up. I was actually dating a girl down there at Asbury. My parents were out of town, and my mother had given me her gold 1966 Mustang convertible, which was the only thing that saved the day for me with being cool. And I was rushing to get home up in Lexington. This was a 2-lane highway at that point. There's a bridge just ahead here, and it was an icy, kind of a snowy day. The roads were not good, and once again I was driving way too fast. I was probably going 60 miles an hour. When I got to this bridge, which we're going to be at in just a moment, there's a red light here right now, which did not exist at that time. And maybe, in fact, if the light had been here, everything would have turned out different for me. But I came around this corner to the right on a 2-lane bridge. Noticed a car stopped ahead that was going to turn left. I touched my brakes, completely lost control of the car, and the car went sliding left down over about a 30-foot embankment, which has now been kind of fixed up, but it's still down there. I'm going to run down there just real quick to show where I should have, could have died. But for about 3 to 5 seconds, I was completely sure I was dead. 60 miles an hour, my car was flying through the air, no seat belts, convertible. The top was up, of course, because it was January. But a girl in the car with me, and I don't know if you've ever had that feeling of knowing you're going to die soon, but I had it. And the car rammed into another car that was parked down here at the bottom of this embankment. There was a little building here that my car would have gone flying through at the time. I'm going to stop for just a moment, just to get a little bit of a feel for how we're down in the bottom here. There was a little building here that my car would have flown through. But there was a car parked in front of the building, and my car went smashing into this other car, came to a stop. I don't remember a lot of details, except that basically the car was totaled, of course, but I was alive, and the girl with me was alive. We survived, no major injuries. But that was my wake-up call. I think everybody probably needs one. I'm glad I wasn't 58 when I had my wake-up call. I was 18. And ironically, the Asbury College revival started, I think, 9 days after that car wreck. I'm not sure exactly when Super Bowl Sunday 1970 was, but that was the day of my wreck. And then February 3rd, 1970 was the day the revival started. February 6th was the day that the Lord got my attention for real. This was a traumatic experience for me, and I had a 2.9 GPA in high school, 2.9 GPA in college. I was the 77th alternate to get into my class in law school. So I was definitely not the smartest guy around. I always say I was extremely ordinary. But even though I was not one of the smart guys, I was smart enough to know that I needed to figure out what was going to happen to me if I had died in that accident. It's funny how a lot of smart people plan their life out. And the question I like to always ask, of course, is where are you going to be 100 years from now? Smart guys only plan until they're about 70 or 80 years old, but what you really need to plan is where you're going to be 100 years from now. And even though I wasn't very smart, I was smart enough to know I needed to figure that out. And so God helped me in that way. And I'm kind of glad I wasn't too smart. Well, okay, we're leaving there. That's Elkhorn. And we're now, as you can see, just right down the street here is Christ United Methodist Church, where Sue and I attended for 29 years. I was a charter member there. My brother Danny was the pastor for the first 7 years, and we stayed there for 29 years. We just finally left about 3 years ago, mostly because I can't explain it, and the reasons don't matter completely, but I've got a new theory that there's only one church in Lexington with a lot of different branches, and going to the same branch all the time just didn't make sense to me anymore. Kind of like playing the same golf course every day doesn't really make sense. I'd rather play lots of great courses and get the diversity and the uniqueness of each one, and the same is true for me in church. So especially for the last year, we've been on an experiment of literally going to a different church every Sunday, and it has been fantastic. We have discovered that the bride of Christ is beautiful, and no matter where we go, we've enjoyed it. A lot of people think I'm anti-church now because I don't go to one church. I haven't joined a church. I'm not a member of a church, so everybody thinks I hate church somehow. And I don't hate church. I love church. It's ingrained in me. My mom and dad made sure of that. But we're having a wonderful time experiencing the fullness of the church by going to different places and hearing different sermons and hearing different music, and sometimes even staying home and having church in our house, and sometimes having church by ourselves. We're getting a wide diversity of church right now, which for right now makes perfect sense for me. And I think it makes sense for a lot of people if they'll stop and think about it. The professional part of my story, on the right is the corporate center. 1992, I moved my law firm to the corporate center and practiced law there for several years. Even now, in the same building where my law firm was located, Philpot and Sullivan, and then later became Philpot, Ransdell, Roach and Weir. I then left law practice for a short time and was president of CBMC International, which meant that I was traveling the world and speaking and working among business and professional people, and had gotten out of law. I'm going to hang a right here real quick and go over to the First Southern National Bank building, where the CBMC office was located, where my law firm was located, where Fishhook International is currently located. Fishhook is just a name change from the Ford Philpot Evangelistic Association, which was my dad's old group, and we kind of changed the focus over time to be a ministry focused primarily on India. So Sue and I love India, and our dear friends there, Guna Kumar, Richard Samuel, Ananthi Jeba Singh, and some other folks that we try to help there. So the Fishhook office is located in that building where my law firm was. And I got elected to the Kentucky State Senate in 1990, and I'm the only person in the history of the Senate that got a full 4-year term without really being elected. I'm going to take a moment and explain that because it all happened right here. The Republican Party headquarters in 1990 were in this building here on the left. And never forget, good grief, it's been 20 years ago now. Yeah, here's the parking lot, 861 Corporate Drive. Long story short, I was encouraged to run for the state senate by Dr. Hicks here in town, Lewis Hicks. And I thought about it and came back and told him, Dr. Hicks, the answer's no. Number one, my wife hates politics because the first time I ran, I lost and borrowed $30,000, which I didn't have, and so politics was kind of a bad experience. And I just said, I'm going on a mission trip to India in 1990 for 5 weeks. I don't have time to be running a campaign. So thank you very much, but the answer is no. I'd love to be a senator, but it would have to be handed to me on a silver platter, is what I told him. Came back from India on the mission trip, discovered nobody was running, and Jack Trevey, the senator, unexpectedly died in the middle of the campaign in that summer. He had no opposition, and so nobody knew what to do. Well, the rules at that time, the law was that the Republican Party was allowed to replace him on the ballot with someone. And that someone would be chosen by the executive committee of 46 people. And so instead of spending, you know, $100,000 or more and a whole year campaigning and all the things that go with an election, all of a sudden I was confronted with the possibility that I could spend no money, have no real election, just needed to call some people on this committee, and maybe I would end up being a senator. I didn't know this until some Christian folks who had gotten involved in politics came to me and said, Tim, we want you to do it, and we think we've got the votes. Well, it turned out, make a real long story short, what they claimed was going to be something that would be easy turned out to be not so easy, but still the election was held a few weeks after his death, and in that building every bigwig politician in the local scene here was for the other person. And I was a total, complete little nobody, but I got 24 votes and she got 22 votes, and so I became a senator. And so for many years I said that Tim Philpot, with his 2.9 GPA and his record of losing lots of lawsuits too, by the way, I've got a whole, and losing lots of golf tournaments, I've got a whole history of losing. The title of my biography would be Tim Philpot, you know, King of Losers or something. But I used to say that apparently I couldn't get elected on my own, but God wanted me in Frankfort, and so he just put me there. And to be honest, I still believe that. I was there 8 years. I got re-elected the old-fashioned way, which is not as easy as it probably should have been, because I was fairly controversial and loudmouthed during my first term in Frankfort. Don't know if that was right or wrong, but that's the way it was. But I did win re-election. I knew though that 8 years in politics in Frankfort was probably going to be enough for me at that point in my time. And I had a chance to go with CBMC as the international president and be involved on a daily basis in evangelism and discipleship of business and professional people. So I got excited about that and did that for a few years, and came back to Lexington at the end of 2003. I'm now on the journey that I make every single day of my life. I used to love my CBMC years because I didn't have a single, you know, every day was so different. Well, my days now are different down in the courtroom when I finally get there. But this is the journey I make just about every day. Frisch's Big Boy. Used to eat breakfast there just about every morning. Used to meet guys there for, you know, discipling and Bible study, and all sorts of wonderful things have happened even at Frisch's Big Boy. Most of my good stuff happens at Panera Bread, Starbucks, Frisch's Big Boy, Cracker Barrel. I'm having breakfast, it seems like, with somebody just about every day. I'm having lunch with people. Jesus used to eat with people all the time. And a lot of good stuff happens when you're sitting around eating together. And so even though we're not a member of a local church, I feel very much like I am part of the Church of Jesus Christ in Lexington, Kentucky. On the right here is St. Joseph Hospital, where my wife worked at the time we got married. I passed it up, by the way, and forgot to mention the Turfland Apartments, where Sue and I lived after we got married, $150 a month. And we were obviously 20 years old and just married, and we thought we had died and gone to heaven, especially me, because I played golf every day. I left Asbury after 2 years because UK offered me a golf scholarship. So for the next 3 years I played golf every day while Sue went to work. I'm not sure life's ever gotten any better than that. Right here on the left is Picadome Golf Course. The first time I ever remember being on a golf course was at Picadome with my dad. And without a doubt, my best memories of life with my father are two things mainly. One is on the golf course, just being with him. And he didn't play golf till he was 44 years old, but when he got started, he got addicted to it. His addiction led to my addiction. And then secondly, of course, my other memory of my dad beyond the golf is just his preaching. And even beyond his preaching, my main memory of my dad is kneeling at an altar with people all the time. He would preach and he didn't preach and then walk off the stage. He would preach and give an old-fashioned altar call, and usually somebody would be there, if not lots of people, and he would stay until everybody was gone and pray with people at the altars. Really my main memory of my dad. When I was a kid, I used to think there was two kinds of preachers, the kind that sweat and the kind that don't sweat. And my dad was one of the kind that sweats, because he would preach so hard and his suit would be dripping wet. And that was back in the old days when no matter how hot it was or what camp meeting it was, the preacher had to wear a coat and tie. And so my dad was a preacher that sweats, and in many ways I vowed I would never be that. It's exactly what I did not want to do and not want to be when I was a kid. But here I am, 59 years old, and I got a lot of that inside of me too. I'm getting ready to come up on Starbucks, where I probably show up 2 or 3 times every week. It's discovered a couple of the guys in there that fill up my coffee in the morning are youth pastors here in Lexington. They caught me reading my Bible in there one morning, and we started figuring out who we were, and so I spent quite a bit of time in there with myself and the Lord and other guys on occasion. Here on the left, a bunch of kids from UK. I'm a volunteer assistant on the Kentucky golf team. I'm kind of the chaplain for the golf team, so I do a Bible study with the UK golf team right here on Tuesday nights. And there's no doubt about it, now that I'm 59, it's just all coming very clear that my time to actually do anything is gone for the most part. And I'm in a season of life where my main purpose and job is to mentor younger people, try to show the way to some younger folks about what to do and how to do it. Paul used to say more than one occasion in the scripture, "Follow me as I follow Christ." He kind of knew there were some people that were following him that hadn't quite yet figured out how to follow Christ, and so he said, look, until you figure it out for yourself, just follow me. Come on, we'll make it. So I'm trying to do that with a few people, a few lawyers, a few golfers. The best thing I got going on right now probably is what I call my Zenith group. We got 12 lawyers. We meet once a month for 4 to 5 hours. And so there's 13 of us all together. I didn't try to plan it that way, but it just invited a whole bunch of people, and that's who showed up. So these guys are in a smaller group, a threesome basically, that meets more regularly, but once a month we get together for 4 to 5 hours and try to discover together whether it's possible to be a Christian lawyer. Everybody laughs when they hear that because most people presume it is impossible. And frankly, most lawyers who happen to be Christians have given up on the possibility of that happening. But we are trying to figure it out, and we have discovered it is possible. And we've been meeting now for 15 months, and it's fantastic. So mentoring younger lawyers is on my agenda for the rest of my life too. We're now in downtown Lexington. Rupp Arena's on the left, the home of the Kentucky Wildcats. My dad had season tickets since the time I was a little boy, so I went for about 20 years and never missed a game. And so Kentucky Wildcat basketball has always been a part of our family. And I'm getting ready now to leave US 68, turning right on Short Street, and we're almost done. We're about a block away from where I joined the law practice of John Angelus in 1977. Angelus and Philpot. It was right here on the left, right across the street from the old courthouse. And I'm going to stop here for just a moment. And the old courthouse has been out of existence now for 6 or 7 or 8 years, I'm not sure, but I've got fabulous memories of there. Most scared I've ever been in my life was going to court there when I was a young lawyer. And but anyway, it got some great memories there. The first $1 million verdict in the history of Fayette County. I was the lawyer representing the plaintiff in a legal malpractice case that seemed impossible. And I can still remember when the jury said $1.something million, I went comatose and ran down the stairs from the 3rd floor over to my office here on the left and ran in and told John Angelus that we'd just gotten $1 million, and I think he almost had a heart attack, poor boy. But we didn't actually get rich on that. It sounds like we did, but like most things in law practice, that doesn't really ever quite work out. But John is still 91 years old, and he's a big part of my story. He's still living, and I'm going to see him later today. He taught me a lot about how to be a lawyer, and proved to me it was possible to be a Christian lawyer. So I appreciate John's part in my little story. He was a great man and a great lawyer. And we're now coming up on where I now go to work every day, Fayette Circuit Court. I'm up on the 5th floor, This story, I guess, ends for me. I left CBMC in 2003 and thought I would just come home and be a lawyer, and it turned out that in 2003 there was a judicial race going on. My former partners encouraged me to run, and I did, and I lost. Wow. Again, Mr. Loser lost again. And so for the first time in my life, for about 2 months, I was unemployed. But to make a long story short, Ernie Fletcher had been elected governor, and there was another opening created by the election for another judge seat in a new thing called family court. And to make a long story short, the new governor, first Republican in I don't know how many years, 40 years, made me his first appointment as a judge. So I was appointed to be Fayette Circuit Court, family court judge. And so the Lord knew I needed to be in family court. I've been there now since January 2004. It's been 7 years. And again, as I tell lots of people, every single thing, as far as I can tell, that I planned has failed. But I look backwards over the last 40 years and I see a lot of wonderful, phenomenal things have happened, but it's all been at the hand of God. His plan was a zillion times better than my plan, and that's just the facts. He saw Mr. 2.9 GPA, average, ordinary, but he got me. And because he had me, he could do some things that I couldn't do for myself. And so, bottom line, his plan's always better than ours. I have a life verse, I suppose. Closest thing I have to a life verse is Revelation 12:11. They overcame him, which means the devil. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony, and they did not love their life so much as to shrink from death. And what that means is, number one, what is our message? What is my message? Well, the blood of the Lamb. I'm hopelessly lost. Nobody's good enough for heaven. I'm not good enough for heaven, for sure. But Jesus Christ, God loved me so much that He sent Jesus to this earth to die for me. And His blood was necessary and is still necessary to give me life. So my life comes from His life, the blood of the Lamb. And then how does that message get out? Well, the method for getting that message out is a testimony. The word of their testimony. That's how you overcome the devil, is by being willing to do what I'm doing right now a little bit, is speak your testimony when you get an opportunity. My theory, of course, is that you never need to preach a sermon. You should only be ready to answer questions. And so if somebody asks you a question, and I get them once in a while, then you got to be ready to answer the question with your testimony. I'm giving you a longer version. The 3-minute version is probably better. But the testimony. And then the third part of that verse, but they did not love their life so much as to shrink from death. We don't have to worry about persecution here in Lexington, Kentucky. Many places in the world, though, your faith and your testimony will cost you your physical life. Here, they may just do cartoons about you in the newspaper, which they used to do on me. Or there may be other subtle forms of persecution. But the bottom line is, being willing to die is just sort of a way of saying that there has to be a craziness about it all. When Paul gave his testimony to King Agrippa, when he got through with his testimony, the king said, "I think he's mad," an old English word. And so I think there has to be a certain madness to our life, a little bit of a craziness. The message only makes sense when people are willing to die for it. And your story only makes sense when people are just a little bit over the top radical about it. And so if I have to err on being normal or abnormal, I think I've decided to be abnormal and err on the side of being just a little bit crazy. So we're headed back to Wilmore now, Highway 68. That's my faith journey. Amazing that so much of it took place on one street, one road, one highway, but Jesus, I don't know, it's probably no accident. Jesus said, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life."